day students. In this video lecture we are going to see regarding the optimization of IP for IoT. In the previous video lectures we have seen we can use the IP as the network layer protocol for the IoT, but there are few challenges for optimally making use of IP as the network layer, that is the constrained nodes and the constrained networks with respect to the IoT. In order to address this, we require some kind of optimization for the internet protocol which can be used in the IoT stack or the IoT architecture. So let us see in what way we can do the optimization. Suppose if you see this figure where we are having the physical layer, data link layer, network layer and transport layer, that is the typical network architecture for the computer networks. In this case, what happens means if you are having a regular IT network, there is a no problem, that is you can pass whatever the packets come from the network layer to the data link layer. In turn, data link layer will pass it to the physical layer. But in case of IoT, what we have seen means your data link layer and the physical layer can carry only a few bytes of data, and it is also a low power and lossy networks it is going to have. Because of this, from your network layer you will be getting a large amount of data. Suppose if you take the IPv6 and IPv4, in case of IPv6 you will be having the 40 bytes of header, plus if you consider the UDP in the transport layer, 8 bytes of data, so 48 bytes of data will be coming from the upper layer. Similarly for the IPv4, 20 bytes of header, and if you take the UDP in the transport layer, 8 bytes, 28 bytes of only the header data. I am talking about not even the payload. That much amount of data will be coming from the upper layers to the data link layer and physical layer. But in case of IoT, your 802 15.4 standards or 802 14.4 standards are unable to handle that much of data. That is why we want some intermediate adaptation layer which is going to translate this large amount of bytes coming from the upper layer to the lower layer, so that there is no deluge of the data bytes to the lower layer, or there is a sudden flow of the huge data bytes to the lower layer. This adaptation layer which is being introduced here is done in the 6LoWPAN protocol or by the 6LoWPAN working group. 6LoWPAN means it is IPv6 low power wireless personal area network. So let us see what the 6LoWPAN working group has done. So we are going to see from 6LoWPAN to 6Low, that is 6LoWPAN specifically caters for the personal area network standards. Even you can do that for the other underlying data link and physical layers. So in the IP architecture, if you see the transport of the IP packets over any given physical layer and data link layer must be defined and documented. So the model for packaging IP into low layer protocols is often referred to as the adaptation layer. Unless the technology is proprietary, IP adaptation layers are typically defined by an IETF working group and released as RFCs. So if a proprietary technology is there, then a particular standard, a developer or a particular organization will develop the standard for that and release it. Unless it is a proprietary protocol, all other open standards based protocols are documented, and its standard is released by, as the request for comments by the IETF, that is Internet Engineering's task force. So an RFC is a publication from IETF that officially documents internet standards, specifications, protocols, procedures and events. For example, if you consider RFC 864, it describes how an IPv4 packet gets encapsulated over an Ethernet frame. It's in a normal IP stack itself or in the computer network stack itself, not on the IoT stack. Similarly, RFC 2464 describes how the same function is performed for an IPv6 packet. IoT related protocols also follow a similar process where we are going to describe how the IPv4 packet is being packaged on top of the Ethernet frame and underlying physical layer. So the main difference is that an adaptation layer designed for the IoT may include some optimizations to deal with the constrained nodes and networks. So that particular drawback is not there in your regular IP stack, constrained nodes and networks, but that drawback is there with respect to the IoT related protocols. So the main examples for the adaptation layer, so optimized for the constrained nodes are things are the one under 6LoWPAN working group and its successor 6Low working group. So what is the difference between 6LoWPAN and 6Low working group? 6LoWPAN means we are talking about IPv6 over low power personal area network only we are going to consider. But in case of 6Low working group, instead of personal area network, can we take into consideration some other local area network or some other PAN technologies into the consideration and provide the adaptation layer for that? Suppose we can consider the industrial Wi-Fi also, where we can put the adaptation layer on top of the sub-gigahertz industrial Wi-Fi. So that can also be done. So the initial focus of the 6LoWPAN working group was to optimize the transmission of the IPv6 packets over the constrained networks such as 802 15.4, that is the PAN technology. So this particular figure clearly compares the regular IP protocol stack and the IoT protocol stack with the 6LoWPAN adaptation layer. So if you see here the IP protocol stack, you are having a regular stack where you have the physical layer, MAC layer, IP layer, and on top of that a transport layer with the different protocols, TCP, UDP, ICMP, and on top of that the application layer protocols. With the IoT protocol stack, you are going to have the 15.4 physical layer, 15.4 MAC layer. On top of that, we are going to have this adaptation layer, and as usual the network layer and transport layers and application protocols. These application protocols may vary, like you may have the COP, XMPP, all those IoT related application protocols may be there here. The basic focus here is in the regular IP protocol stack you don't require any kind of adaptation, but with respect to the IoT you require the adaptation. The reason is your underlying data link layer and physical layer is supposed to work on the low power and lossy networks, and it cannot carry the large amount of data. So what you have to do means, from the upper layer whatever the large amount of data is coming, you have to switch it down or bring it down and transfer over the data link layer and the physical layer. That's why we are going to have this specific adaptation layer. So if you make this adaptation for the PAN, we call it as the 6LoWPAN. If you make or if you bring in some other underlying data link layer or the local area network over here, then we call it as the 6LoW over some other Ethernet or data link layer or the physical layer. So 6LoWPAN working group published several RFCs, but the foundational RFC which it has published for the PAN is the 49994, where it defines the frame header capabilities uh, for the header compression, fragmentation and mesh addressing. These three things are very basic when it comes to the 6LoWPAN. How you are going to achieve a header compression, fragmentation and mesh addressing, which we will see in detail in this video. So these headers can be stacked in the adaptation layer to keep these concepts separate while enforcing a structured method for expressing each capability. Let us see how these headers are being stacked. So this particular figure clearly shows how you can stack the headers in the 6LoWPAN. Uh, the regular IPv6 payload will be there. Along with that IPv6 header compression, then 802.15.4 header. This we have dealt in the module 2. That is how you are going to have the 15.4 G header structure, E header structure and all. If you are not understanding this or the frame structure of this 15.4, you can refer to the module 2. Similarly, IP along with the IPv6 header compression, you can have the fragment header. In the same way, mesh addressing header, fragment header and IPv6 header compression can be included. So 15.4 deals with the data link layer. This IPv6 payload is coming from the network layer. What we are going to do here means we are going to compress the header data, so that we are not going to have a much amount of data to be carried in the data link layer. So we will see the header compression, fragmentation and the mesh addressing or mesh routing in detail. So first we will see regarding the header compression. IPv6 header compression for 6LoWPAN was defined initially in RFC 4944, as I have said earlier, and subsequently updated by RFC 6282. This capability actually shrinks the size of IPv6 40-byte headers and UDP's 8-byte headers down as low as 6 bytes combined in some cases. The header compression for 6LoWPAN is only defined for IPv6 header and not IPv4. 6LoWPAN protocol does not support IPv4, and in fact there is no standardized IPv4 adaptation layer. It only supports the IPv6. 6LoWPAN header compression is stateless and conceptually it is not too complicated. However, number of factors affect the amount of compression, such as implementation of RFC 4944 versus 6922, whether the UDP is included or not, and various IPv6 addressing scenarios and all. At a high level, 6LoWPAN works by taking advantage of shared information known by all nodes from their participation in the local network. Let us see how the IPv6 header is being compressed in the adaptation layer. So this particular figure clearly shows how the 6LoWPAN without header compression and with header compression is there. If you take it without header compression, you are having 6LoWPAN header of 1 byte and IPv6 header of 40 bytes and UDP of 8 bytes, and you will get only remaining 53 bytes for the payload to be carried in the data link layer or the link layer. I am not talking about the network layer over here. I am talking about once the data is passed to the link layer or the data link layer, how it is being treated without header compression. If you are having the header compression, then what is going to happen means 6LoWPAN header is compressed with the IPv6 header. Only 2 bytes it is going to take instead of your 40 bytes plus 1 byte. Then your UDP is sliced to half, that is it is going to take only 4 bytes. So totally we are going to have the 6 bytes instead of this 48 bytes plus 1 byte, that is the 49 bytes. So here we are going to get the totally 108 bytes can be used for the payload instead of the 53 bytes. So FCS means the frame check sequence. It is for the stability of the frame it is required. You don't worry about the FCS here, you only worry about the payload, how much difference we are going to get by the header compression. So the bottom I have already explained. The bottom of half of the figure 5.4 shows a frame where header compression has been enabled for a best case scenario. So 6LoWPAN header increases to 2 bytes to accommodate the compressed IPv6 header over here, and the UDP has been reduced in half to 4 bytes from 8. So most importantly, the header compression has allowed the payload to more than double, that is 53 bytes to 108 bytes, which is obviously much more efficient. So next we will see the how the fragmentation is going to happen. So the MTU, maximum transmission unit for an IPv6 network, must be at least 1280 bytes. So the term MTU defines the size of the largest protocol data unit that can be passed from the network layer to the lower layer. So IPv6 is having the MTU of 1280 bytes, but that MTU in the link layer for the PAN, that is the IEEE 802.15.4 standard, is 127 bytes. So where is 1280 bytes and 127 bytes in the link layer? So I will explain this. See, what we are going to talk is IPv6. This is having the 1280 bytes as the MTU, but when you come over here it is having the 127 bytes as the MTU. So there is a huge difference between the MTU which we are going to get from the network layer to the data link layer. So what we have to do means we have to fragment this and we have to handle. That's why we are going to go for this fragmentation. So we can see this is a problem because IPv6 with a much larger MTU is carried inside the 15.4 frame with a much smaller one. To remedy this situation, large IPv6 packets must be fragmented across multiple 15.4 frames at layer 2. The fragment header utilized by the 6LoWPAN is composed of 3 primary fields, that is datagram size, datagram tag and datagram offset. So you can see over here 15.4 header, as usual it is there. In the fragmentation header we are going to have the 1 byte of fragmentation header, then 1 byte of datagram size, 2 bytes of datagram tag and 1 byte of datagram offset we are going to have. So 1 byte of datagram size specifies the total size of the unfragmented payload. If you are not going to fragment your payload, then what is the total size of your unfragmented payload? That is being represented or specified by the datagram size. Datagram tag identifies the set of fragments for a payload. How many set of fragments you have defined for a payload. Finally, datagram offset field delineates how far into a payload a particular fragment occurs. uh, it's like, suppose you are having 1280 bytes being fragmented, then you have to define how far your fragment is there from a particular offset. Say that whether it is 128 bytes or whether it is 60 bytes, whether it is 80 bytes, like that, how far into a payload a particular fragment occurs. That's why this data fragment offset indicates that. uh, Usually this datagram offset is not required for the first fragment. The reason is first fragment usually begins from the 0th byte. So for the subsequent fragment you can specify from where your next fragment is going to start. So So the first fragmentation header for the IPv6 payload being only 4 bytes long, the remainder of the fragments have the 5 byte header field. As I have said, for the first fragment you have the 4 bytes. This may not be there, or this is not required. The reason is it starts from the 0th byte. For the other subsequent fragments you have the 5 bytes fragmentation header. So this is regarding the fragmentation of the uh, MTU from the network layer in the 6LoWPAN. So next we are going to uh, discuss about the mesh addressing. The purpose of 6LoWPAN mesh addressing function is to forward the packets over the multiple hops. So this forwarding of the packets may happen within a particular domain, or it may happen between the two different domains or two different types of networks. So if it happens within a network, then it is kind of a local addressing, and if it happens between the two different networks, then it is a kind of a global addressing, which we have seen in our regular IP stack or in our regular computer network IP addressing. So the three fields which are defined for this header are hop limit, then source address and destination address. Obviously, whenever we send any packet uh, to the destination over the multiple hops, there will be a hop limit, because within the this particular hop limit, or when it crosses this many hops, it has to be delivered to the destination. So that's why we are specifying the hop limit, means how many hops it has to cross to reach the destination address. So analogous to the IPv6 hop limit field, hop limit for the mesh addressing also provides an upper limit on how many times the frame can be forwarded. Each hop decrements this value by 1 as it is forwarded. Once the value hits 0, it is dropped and no longer it can be forwarded. Source and destination address fields for mesh addressing are IEEE 15.4 addresses indicating the endpoints of an IP hop. Suppose if you want to understand about the 15.4 addressing format, you can refer to the module 2, where in detail it is being discussed regarding the 15.4, 15.4 GE, all the frame formats. Here we are going to only look into the mesh addressing, where we will focus on the hop limit, source address and destination address. So note that mesh addressing header is used as a single IP subnet and is a layer 2 type of routing known as the mesh under. I will explain in detail what is this mesh under and mesh over. Let me finish this particular header format, then we will go to that. So 1 byte of mesh addressing header including the hop count, then 2 bytes of source address, 2 bytes of destination address will be there. Next we will go to the mesh under and mesh over. As I have said earlier, suppose if you are going to forward your packets among the multiple hop within a particular network or the same type of network, then it is called as the mesh under. Suppose if you are using the gateway in case of mesh routing, it is called as the fully functional device FFD. Then we call it as the mesh over. Like we use we forward our packet to a different type of network. For network technologies such as 15.4, 15.4G and 19.1.2a, that is the power line communication that support the mesh technologies and operate at the physical and data link layers, two main options exist for establishing the reachability and forwarding packets. With the first option, that is the mesh under, routing of packets is handled at the 6LoWPAN adaptation layer itself. So other option known as the mesh over or route over utilizes the IP routing for getting packets to their destination. Why routing is required over here? Because you are going to send the packet to other type of networks where you require a global addressing. With mesh under routing, routing of IP packets leverages the 6LoWPAN mesh addressing header to route and forward the packets at the link layer itself. It is very easy to understand. For a simple analogy, you can understand mesh under as the forwarding of the packets within a local area network by a switch, and mesh over or route over you can consider as forwarding the packets by the router or gateway to the internet or other different types of networks in our regular IP stack. So if you understand that analogy, it's very easy to understand this. So the term mesh under is used because multiple link layer hops can be used to complete a single IP hop. Nodes have a layer 2 forwarding table. This can be considered to a switching table which we keep in our regular IP stack. Here we are having the layer 2 forwarding table that they consult to route the packets to their final destination within the mesh. An edge gateway terminates the mesh under domain. See, what is the meaning of this sentence? Edge gateway terminates means the moment you reach the particular gateway device and router, your mesh under network domain is over. The reason is beyond that it is not capable of forwarding the packets. Suppose if you want the capability beyond that gateway or the router, then you have to go for the mesh over. The edge gateway must also implement a mechanism to translate between the configured layer 2 and any IP routing mechanism implemented on other layer 3 IP interfaces. So in mesh over or route over scenarios, IP3 routing is utilized for computing the reachability and then getting the packets forwarded to a destination. A typical routing table is required. Here in the mesh under, since it is within a single IP network or within a same type of network, only a forwarding table is enough. So this is regarding the mesh addressing in the 6LoWPAN. See, this brings us to the end of the particular core concepts of the 6LoWPAN. Once again, I will reiterate what are the key things in the 6LoWPAN, that is header compression, fragmentation and mesh addressing. These three are the key things which you have to focus in the basic 6LoWPAN standard or 6LoWPAN RFC. Next we will see what are the other focus of 6LoW working group. As I have said, you can change the nomenclature from 6 low PAN to 6 low. The reason is when we keep the PAN means it is restricted to the personal area networks itself. Even this IPv6 adaptation can be extended to the other underlying link layers and the physical layers also. That's why 6 low working groups each to expand on this completed work with the focus of IPv6 connectivity over constrained node networks or other constrained node networks. While 6LoWPAN working group initially focused its optimization on 15 dot low power lossy networks, standardizing IPv6 over other link layers technologies also still needed. Therefore, the charter of 6LoW working group, now called IPv6 over networks of resource constrained nodes, is to facilitate the IPv6 connectivity over constrained node networks. So in particular, this working group is focused on the following, that is how it can provide a adaptation layer or 6 low working layer over Bluetooth low energy, then transmission of the IPv6 packets over NFC. Again, NFC is one more frequently used communication technology within the data link layer as well as the physical layer, where we require the transmission of the IPv6 packets over a low power lossy networks. Then IPv6 over the 802.11ah. Early in this video only I have told or I have described 11.11 means the industrial Wi-Fi, that is in the sub gigahertz layer it is going to work. So then how you can provide the transmission of the packets over this 802.11ah layer or the sub gigahertz data link layers. Then transmission of the IPv6 packets over DECT, ultra low or low energy, transmission of the IPv6 over the wireless networks for industrial automation, process automation link layers. All these are the further focus of 6 low working group. But as far as our focus is there, we should worry about the 6 low PAN, where we mainly study about the header compression, fragmentation and mesh addressing. This particular figure or this particular format or header stack you should keep in your mind, that is 15.4 header will be there, which is from the link layer. These three are the main features which is being provided by the 6 low PAN, that is the mesh addressing, fragmentation, then IPv6 header compression. So this brings us to the end of lecture on the optimization for IP in IoT and also the 6 low PAN protocol. In next video lectures we will discuss about the RPL and other protocols. Thank you.